Well, he was the first person. It was on Monday night during the game that Jordan Schultz broke the story that Jerry had contacted Deion Sanders. Ed Werder advanced the story today that Deion would take the job. So let's get down to the skinny here. Werder knows what he's doing. Did Jerry get a hold of Deion on your Monday report?
Yes.
Okay, so that's how it initiated.
Yeah, so what happened was during that week-long process in limbo with Mike McCarthy, Jerry's now thinking, I might need to think about a viable candidate moving forward. And the name Deion Sanders gets brought up, and Jerry gets excited. We know Jerry loves his flash.
Yeah.
Especially during, the playoffs. This is his opportunity. We're not in the playoffs, but we could still have some fun. We can be relevant. So he calls Deion, and Deion and him have a really good, positive conversation. It wasn't even a formal interview, but it's the relationship over the last 3 decades. It's the fact that Deion, maybe more so than anyone else, understands the gravitas, the cachet, the prestige of the Dallas Cowboys, Colin, and the fact that Deion, in many ways, has run his program at Colorado. I know you've talked about this, much like an NFL team, much like the Cowboys. They have become the focus of college football. It didn't matter that they weren't in the college football playoff, but I think Jerry really respected the fact that they go from 4 wins to 9 wins, and the fact that in many ways, Deion Sanders is like the type of person that can come to Dallas even without any head coaching experience and get it from day one, and maybe more importantly, be able to relate to Jerry on a personal level, and that matters a lot.
Now, Jerry doesn't historically do buyouts.
Correct.
But he would have to do one here.
He would have to do it. It would be substantial. I don't know the exact number. I would imagine it would approach somewhere around $10 million. Yeah. It'd be a big number. He would have to do it here, but they backed themselves into a corner. I talked about this. It was a self-inflicted wound if you're Jerry Jones. I don't understand what over that final week with Mike McCarthy, Colin, do you not know from 5 years with the guy? And because they didn't fire or extend Mike McCarthy, they do not have the opportunity this week to interview an Aaron Glenn, to interview a Ben Johnson. If they are going to get those slips permitted, it will have to wait till next week. So as a result of waiting with McCarthy, the Cowboys are behind the 8 ball.
So was it McCarthy and Jerry Jones? It probably wasn't feisty. I'll tell you what I theorize.
Yeah.
McCarthy's using Don Yee as an agent.
Correct.
And
same as Tom Brady's.
Once Vrabel signed with New England, Don Yee said, you're the number 1 candidate. Ask for 5 guaranteed years. Jerry won't give it to you.
No way. Never.
That's right. Jerry won't give you 5.
No.
But it will allow you to interview for jobs.
Correct.
So my guess was right.
I think there's something to that. He also has, Mike McCarthy does, a real relationship with Mickey Loomis in New Orleans. And I think it's been made clear to me that for all intents and purposes, the Chicago job, and I haven't said this publicly, but it is a 2-horse race between Mike McCarthy and Ben Johnson. Now,
it is.
I think if Brian Flores goes in and wows him, then he is still in that mix. But right now, I think McCarthy and I think Ben Johnson are the 2 leading candidates for Chicago. And it will be really interesting to see what type of direction they want to go, because in many ways, the franchise is Caleb Williams, ideally for the next decade plus.
So they're going to get, Caleb said yesterday or the day before on Amaron St. Brown's podcast, I'd prefer an offensive coach I can grow
Totally
with.
Get it.
So they're going to give him that.
They're going to give him an offensive coach, I believe, but he's not going to have a say in the hiring. Yes, he's the number 1 pick. Yes, he's the franchise. He's the cornerstone, but he's still a second-year player. It's not like he's going to Kevin Warren and Ryan Poles saying, give me Ben Johnson. He's not going to influence the decision in that capacity, but they also recognize, the Bears do, that they have now had Matt Eberflus, Luke Getsy, Shane Waldron, all of these coaches that have not connected to their players, especially this year with Caleb and Waldron. So they're desperately in need, in my opinion, of an offensive coach, an innovator that will help get Caleb from point A to point B. And if you look at Mike McCarthy, he's not a perfect coach, but one thing he has done very well is help develop an Aaron Rodgers, help develop a Dak Prescott.
Yeah.
I think in theory he could do the same thing with Caleb, although if I'm the Bears, my number 1 choice should be Ben Johnson because of how he's resurrected Jared Goff in Detroit.
So Ben Johnson apparently is the Raiders' primary target right now. Can you validate it? Have you heard it? Can we just have a Raider update?
I'm not willing to go so far as to say that Ben Johnson's the favorite with the Raiders. I know the Raiders really like him. I know that he has multiple options, including Jacksonville, which is a really good job, and the Bears. And we know he interviewed with the Patriots. And the reason he did that was so that he could have a trial run, knowing that it was most likely going to be Mike Vrabel. And that's exactly what happened. So he interviewed on purpose with New England first. But the Raiders are in the mix, and we've talked about this. Tom Brady's a big factor there, as he should be. But if you're Ben Johnson and you have your pick of the litter, you're going to take a long look at where you can win and where you can develop. And the Raiders, although a lot to be said about that franchise historically, do not have a quarterback, and they do not have the roster, quite frankly, as a Chicago or a Jacksonville.
What is the key to the Jets' job?
Yeah.
Last year, it was, if you'd have hired a guy last year, it would get along with Aaron. I don't think that's the key anymore.
Yeah. So I have to be careful here because our friend here.
Old J-Mac gets a little sensitive.
This is still a marquee job, the marquee franchise, and an owner in Woody Johnson who will give you time. He gave Joe Douglas 6 years, Colin, 6 years without a single playoff appearance. That's almost unheard of. So executive GM candidates are looking at the Jets like, if I go there, not only can I build, but I'll have the time, I'll have the runway. And there's a lot to be said about that. But I think I believe the Jets will name a GM within the next week, maybe a little sooner, and then you'll have the head coach, and then you can have the Aaron Rodgers discussion. But that's a fluid situation in the sense that if the new GM comes in and believes that Aaron is a viable bridge quarterback, there's a possibility that Aaron comes back next year. Most people around the league believe that Aaron is done.
Well, they do.
Most people, but I'm not willing to say that necessarily, because if the GM comes in and says, I think Aaron with this roster can win us 10, 11 games if we keep him upright, that's possible that he comes back. I think it's also possible, and there are a lot of scenarios, a lot of teams that are desperate for a quarterback. I know we want to talk about Sam Darnold. I know we want to talk about what direction does Pittsburgh go. I'm not reporting this, but hypothetically, what if someone like Aaron becomes available? Does Pittsburgh look at him? It's not just the Jets. He played well enough down the stretch of the season to have another option.
Let's talk about the Steelers. They're in the same predicament they were in 2022. They need a quarterback, and it's a bad quarterback class. I would take a swing. My take is T.J. Watt, George Pickens, 2 first-round picks. Can you get up to Shedeur Sanders territory? If you could, I'd think about it.
Wow, that's a colossal trade. I don't think I'm giving up T.J. Watt.
Okay.
And as good, Pickens is great, but we know that he has had issues there and that they have had to discipline him. They really believe in his talent, and you wonder whether or not they would move him. I'm not willing to go there. But to your point about Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, it's considered a 2-quarterback draft. I wonder if someone were to slip, could Pittsburgh then move up?
That's what I'm saying.
But I'm also thinking, if I'm the Steelers, we're 4-2 with Justin Fields, 2-0 against playoff teams. Do we give him another look? Russell Wilson 6 weeks ago, they thought he could be the quarterback for the next 2 or 3 years. Are we willing to move off that completely? But
I think what happened is when Russell struggled against better teams, Justin Fields, you're not going to have to pay him as much, I would guess, as Russell Wilson. So why not, if we don't know if Justin's the future, let's give Justin the job next year, and then next year we make our big run.
I like that.
Because next year's quarterback draft class, I'm told, much better.
Yeah, and listen, I think the Steelers, it's still too early, and I think they're going to take their time. They're not going to be rash. They know they have an opportunity now with a very good roster, a lot of pieces there, if they were to have the right quarterback, and we thought it was Russell Wilson, but they're going to take their time. I would say, out of all these teams looking for a quarterback, it wouldn't be surprising to me if Pittsburgh waited till the end and waited till the draft.
Sam Darnold, I think it's fairly clear that they're going to give J.J. McCarthy a shot. He elevated and rebooted Darnold's career.
Yeah.
You picked a quarterback early. You gave up picks. Go let him play. Darnold has a market. I kind of feel like it's a Baker Mayfield market. Give me a team. I think the Colts is the play. I'll plant my flag on this.
I like it.
I like Indy's roster. Quarterback, I don't think it's close. I could argue in Seattle, and I love that roster, Geno for another year can win us 9 games. I think it's untenable in Indy. I don't think that's an NFL starting quarterback. I thought for a year it was fun. It just doesn't work. Darnold, Colts, will they be in the running?
You're saying go to Shane Steichen, who did wonders for Jalen Hurts.
And Justin Herbert is a rookie.
Right, that's true. No, Steichen is a really good quarterback guy. They drafted Anthony Richardson in the top 5. I know they love his talent.
But he's hurt a lot, and the accuracy stuff is...
He's so young, though.
Yeah, I know, but
22 years old.
Name a quarterback who was really wildly historically inaccurate.
Josh Allen was the guy coming out that was inaccurate.
But by year two, he wasn't getting hurt, and he was jumping over linebackers, and he was putting up running and passing numbers that were redeemable.
Yeah, Indy could be in play with Darnold. There's quite a few teams that could be in play. We said last week if Darnold struggled again,
you said it,
that his runway with the Vikings was probably up. I would say most likely he's played his final game in Minnesota because the tag is going to be right around 40. There's no reason for Kwesi to say in KOC, we're going to tag you now and pay 40 when his contract's not going to come in at that number. The Baker Mayfield $100 million over 3 is probably about right for Sam Darnold. He played so well the second half of the season, but what happened the last 2 games, 9 sacks, a record against the Rams. He's awful, 2 picks, was really bad against Detroit. And then you have Minnesota thinking, not only do we draft J.J. McCarthy, but he was excellent in the preseason. Yeah. Someone there told me before as the season was getting going that we have there's no question J.J. McCarthy's the guy. Then he has the meniscus surgery and he has to miss the season. They really believe in him. They also brought in Daniel Jones at a very small number. So I wonder if Minnesota just decides to let Sam walk, which I think is more likely at this point. Then they have McCarthy healthy and Daniel Jones go out and battle out for next year.
So Jerry Jones, let's pivot back to Cowboys Deion Sanders. Jerry, by the way, the story breaks during a game that I'm interested in Deion.
I just showed J-Mac. I got 400 unread texts right now. I'll show you after the segment. 400.
From what?
Well, after we dropped that Deion report, the phone went crazy. Because not only is it Deion and the Cowboys, but everyone wants to know how real is it.
Now, what do people on your phone say?
Well, it's a lot of teams saying, is that real? It's a lot of executives. It's a lot of agents saying, is this a push to get more money? I don't think it is. He has too much respect for Rick George, the AD in Colorado. And I think also Jerry being so excited about having Deion return to the star and what that would mean for the Cowboys. So it's a lot of question marks. I'm going to show you some of these texts that you'll be like, wow, that's crazy. I can't believe. But I believe should Deion, it's been made abundantly clear to me, should Deion want the Cowboys job, that he will either be at or certainly near the top of the list. And that means it's very real. But he has to want the job. And I still think we're figuring that out. But because he has the relationship with Jerry, that's why he can call up a Deion Sanders and not even schedule the formal interview. And I think to a degree, a much lesser extent, he has some of that with Kellen Moore. That's why they waited with Kellen Moore. He knows him. He's been in the building. But I believe that Dallas is absolutely hell-bent on getting this hire not only right, but having it have some pizzazz, some panache, some splash. And if it's not Deion, Kellen Moore is another name that makes a lot of sense. But Robert Saleh, it needs to be someone that understands that market.
For the record, my staff did a good job. So we were comparing Josh and Anthony Richardson. So Josh Allen came into the league, completed 53%.
His rookie year or in college?
Rookie year.
Rookie year. Right.
Second year, he was close to 59%. Third year, he was close to 70%.
Yeah, that was the huge jump.
Okay, Anthony Richardson, almost 60% as a rookie, dropped to 47%. So I could argue Josh had a lot more starts in college and grew in one direction. The more video you got on Anthony Richardson, who was hurt more than Josh, the worse he got. It's as if the league went, he's got about 2 things he can do, cut those off. So whereas Josh, it was like, ooh, he's good. Oh, wow, he's really good. Uh-oh, we can't stop him. With Anthony, it's like there's something there. We solved the puzzle. He's limited.
How about the Rams, by the way?
For what?
The Rams. I mean, what a story. Do we have 2 minutes to talk Rams?
Well, have they missed the last 3 years on a defensive draft pick? They're all great.
How good is Jared Verse? I mean, this kid's unbelievable. How well have they drafted? Think about this. They're 1-4. They have not only Kupp and Nakua hurt, then they have the 2 linemen hurt, Avila and Jackson. They have their defense is decimated.
Tyler Higbee, the tight end, wasn't available.
The tight end didn't even play most of the season. It was told to me that week 8 was the pivotal point. They beat Minnesota on Thursday night. Had they lost that game, I think most teams believe, it wouldn't have been a fire sale, Colin, but it would have been, the Rams would have been open for business. That doesn't mean they were going to trade Kupp, but they were going to be open for business and realize that this season was over. They beat Minnesota. They rattle off 10 of 13. The defense over the last 4 games, under 9 points allowed with all their starters in play. And when you think about Matthew Stafford, unbelievable how well he's played.
Finally has a healthy O-line.
The O-line, there it is right there. And I think Matthew Stafford's a Hall of Famer, almost 100 wins, Super Bowl champ, comeback player of the year, fastest ever to 60,000 passing yards. There's so many factors with Stafford, but the connection with McVay, and then taking it a step further, a few years ago, the Rams did something that very few teams want to do, which is realize we're not a player or two away. We are multiple guys away. So they rip the Band-Aid off, and that's when they move on from a Bobby Wagner, a Leonard Floyd, a Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey, and then they start to retool. They start to hit on the draft.
Yeah, last year was the rebuild year, and they made the playoffs.
And Aaron Donald retires. We said probably about 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, that if the Rams could somehow get healthy, that's the team not only in the NFC West, but potentially in the NFC that nobody wants to play. And I know how good Philly is. We all do.
Yeah.
But if you're Philly and you're thinking, we really got to deal with the Rams now, this team is as hot as anyone. They have as good a coach as anyone and a quarterback playing about as well as anyone. So if I'm a Rams fan, I'm ecstatic.
J-Mac said, so I picked the Rams to win the division. And old J-Mac said, you can't replace Donald. And I said,
well, that's true. You
can't. He's, after Reggie White, the greatest defensive lineman I've ever said. But I said they've been planning it because Aaron Donald was up front with the organization. Aaron said, I got a couple years here.
Yeah.
And so they started drafting the defensive line 2 and 3 years ago, and they've hit on all of them. And now their pass rush is equal to Donald and Von Miller, but they're not paying anybody yet.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah. And if you've watched them, in the first month they had 8 sacks. They had 9 against Minnesota. You're watching. It's like you're watching the Rams in the last month grow. These guys, like, by next year, it'll be a top 3 defense in the league. They haven't missed on anybody.
Yeah. And they are, I would say, arguably one of the best 1-2 punches at receiver, and now a healthy offensive line with a quarterback who's upright and comfortable, and one of, if not the best play callers in the NFL. Pretty exciting.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Uncle Colin. Subscribe here to get the latest from the herd, including exclusive behind-the-scenes videos and more, wherever you may be, however you may be watching. Thanks again for making us part of your day.